Welcome once again to the news. Government has banned indefinitely, you may have heard, the construction of new petrol and gas retail stations across the country. The ban, which takes immediate effect, is part of reforms agreed by Cabinet as part of efforts towards finding a lasting solution to the frequent gas explosions. Government is also to roll out a cylinder recirculation model for LPG distribution within a year. Details of the new measures in this report.
According to the statement signed by the Information Minister Mustafa Hamid, President Akufo-Addo also directed the immediate inspection of all gas stations and the vigorous enforcement of existing regulations by the National Petroleum Authority. Also is the review of the current licensing regime to ensure that only those with demonstrable capacity engage in the LPG distribution business, coupled with the institution of mandatory training and certification of the staff of regulators, oil marketing companies OMCs, and LPG marketing companies to ensure the safe handling of LPG. The president also wants a review of safety protocols along the entire value chain through the combined efforts of the Environmental Protection Agency EPA and the National Petroleum Authority NPA, among other stakeholder institutions, as well as the recruitment of 200 safety auditors by the NPA to join the staff of the Factories Inspectorates Department to carry out regular checks at stations to ensure full compliance with safety standards and practices. In addition is the immediate incorporation of standards and guidelines developed by the Ghana Standards Authority on the handling, storage and distribution of LPG and other petroleum products to strengthen the enforcement regime, whilst the fire service and the police service expedites actions on ongoing investigations, which will see any operator or regulatory official found culpable facing the full rigors of the law. A task force is also to be deployed within 30 days to assess the risk that the current LPG infrastructure poses to public health and safety. High-risk stations are to be immediately closed down without regard to any political or special interests, while low-risk stations are to be designated for the supply of gas for vehicles with improved safety standards.
Let's get some reaction to this first from the LPG marketers who are kicking against government's resolve to enforce stricter regulations in the downstream petroleum sector. Speaking to Joy Business, the public relations manager for the LPG Marketers Association, Bernard Oredu, said government's knee-jerk reaction to finding solutions could rather compound the problem and affect productivity in the sector.
We are not enthused about the directive. There's no one that really sits with us very well. And we were of the view that if you could remember, sometime earlier this year or latter part of 2016, this issue of cylinder recirculation module came up, and we resisted it as an association, and we adduced cogent reasons. We gave government the reason for taking the position we had taken, and government found wisdom in what we had suggested. So there was a communique from government withdrawing the implementation of the policy. And the communique also added that in the event that a new policy would have to come up, we will be resorted to as an association, as industry players. But we were taken aback when, on the heels of the happening on Saturday at Atomic Junction, a policy or a directive came out from Cabinet without recourse to us. We are of the view that per the earlier communication, we were to be resorted to as to the way forward in this LPG distribution. Centralized system we are talking about here could be a combination of about 20, 30, 40 outlets, because it's a big tank farm where the cylinders are filled there. Do we have the firefighting equipment? Do we have the adequate emergency equipment to fight these fires? It's a big issue we need to interrogate. The person who would be using the cylinder at home, has he been educated enough as to the use, as to how to detect leakage? Because bear in mind that he would have no control over the cylinder. He's just going to pick it from an outlet. So he doesn't even know the condition of that particular cylinder. That is how the model is. The model is not as if you are going to own your own cylinder. It's like Coca-Cola. You go, you pick your Coke. When it's empty, you go put it there and bring another Coke like filled. So you don't even have control over how the conditions in which the cylinders are going to be kept. So if there is any leakage and it's not detected at the source, it is transferred to your home or if there is a leakage during the process of transportation, it is transferred to your home. So the question is, have you been educated enough to detect such leakages since you are not going to have control over your cylinders? So you see, it's a big issue. It's a national issue. And we as an association thought that upon happening at Atomic Junction, probably was a time to relook at some of these things. And we were of the view that before any decision, any directive was to be taken, we should have been engaged.
Well, risk management expert Kojo Denu is of a different opinion. He thinks the decision by government to enforce safety regulations at the various stations is laudable.
I believe it's a temporary measure, so to allow them to carry out the necessary fundamental surveys that they have to ensure that those presently operating meet the standard. And once those presently operating are able to meet the standard, then the new ones that will be coming will be expected to also follow suit. So there's been loss of life, so I believe it is proportionate at the present moment. It depends, so long as it's not an indefinite, because they are business and some have invested, we're nearing almost opening phase of their businesses. So I believe there should be fairness, but for the time being, I believe it's just. There is a need to ensure that the cylinders in circulation meet a standard, and in the current system where each individual brings their own cylinder, whether it's there are safety issues or not, they come and it gets filled and then they take it home. There is a need to make sure that there's a system in place that allows us to take out all the weak and dangerous cylinders out of the system. So if that's the objective, then I think it's a good idea. It's about implementation and how the current stakeholders in the industry, how they are going to be involved in the whole process. Because there are companies out there presently working, so how are they going to be involved in the process? That has to be factored in. So long as it's managed well, I think it's a laudable move.
Away from that, and efforts to fight cybercrime will be getting a major boost as the Ministry for Communications presses for some allocation in the 2018 budget. This follows the establishment of a National Cybersecurity Secretariat within the ministry to protect various national systems and data from cyber attacks. The National Cybersecurity Advisor to Government, Albert Enchiboisiako, shared some thoughts on this issue with Joy Business at the launch of the Cybersecurity Week.
The National Cybersecurity Week is targeted at scaling up awareness on cybercrime and related issues, especially with ascendancy in such incidences. Speaking at the launch of the program, National Cybersecurity Advisor to Government Albert Enchiboisiako cited government's commitment to beefing up cybersecurity by making budgetary allocations for it in the 2018 budget.
Funding shouldn't be an excuse to neglect our national cybersecurity. And I'm speaking in the position as a cybersecurity advisor to the government. And this is a position that has to move across within the stakeholders that I'm working with. Look, the kind of investment that we are doing in this country, if you look at the volume of this, amount of money that we are putting into our national ICT development, we can make an argument to say there is no funds. An honorable minister is making a case for the first time in 2018 budgets, there is going to be a budget line for cybersecurity. So it's not just talking, but we cannot do cybersecurity without making budgetary allocation for that. And I think it's a non-negotiable position. A country like Ghana, which has taken digitalization seriously, which is really the baseline of our economic transformation, there can be an argument.
Meanwhile, Deputy Minister for Communication Vincent Sowa Lute is assuring that relevant policies will soon be implemented to support the fight against cybercrime.
Before you be able to to fight cybercrime or to prevent, to ensure that your entire cyber ecosystem is safe, you need policies. We need governance structure, you need institutional frameworks. And this government inherited a national cybersecurity policy and strategy from the previous government, but we have redefined, we have tweaked it to ensure that it serves the current trends and to make sure it's in line with national best practices.
The Cybersecurity Week is scheduled for the 23rd to 27th of October and organized by the Ministry of Communications in collaboration with the National Communications Authority, Chamber of Telecommunications and the Data Protection Agency.
The Energy Ministry is partnering the Ghana Oil and Gas for Inclusive Growth in an initiative aimed at boosting Ghanaian participation in the oil and gas sector. The partnership will see about 3,000 Ghanaians trained in the oil and gas sector under the Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Program. Here's another report by Sheila Tamaklo.
According to the Deputy Minister for Energy, as Ghana's oil and gas industry continues on its upward trajectory of growth, there's a need for adequate manpower to steer activities, hence government's effort towards building capacity under the Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Program.
As a country, we really haven't developed our capacity. We haven't prepared our people as fast as the industry has developed. And so we are likely to have an industry without Ghanaians participating in that industry. This is the reason why we are determined to introduce a new program we call the Accelerated Oil and Gas Capacity Program, which will position Ghanaians, well-trained Ghanaians, provide the requisite skills, so that as the industry grows, it will be populated by our own people. And I see GOGIC's intervention here as important as it will let people feel directly the impact of your work. But if you continue to support policy development, regulatory strengthening, it takes time for the impact of these interventions to mature and then to spill over to the people. And so you may want to consider if you want to partner with us to roll out this program, which is going to run for 5 years. We're expecting to turn out between 1,000 and 3,000 Ghanaians. We're well trained to man our own industry here, but also for export of skills to other countries around us. There's so much oil and gas activity around us.
Meanwhile, partners Ghana Oil and Gas for Inclusive Growth, GOGIC, is advising that proper assessment be done before the capacity building program is rolled out.
It's important that this accelerated capacity building program is founded on some analysis of what is the sector going to need in terms of when we look at the growth profile of the sector, what is it going to need and what do we have already, because there's been quite a lot of capacity building by different agencies. You will know that the annual budget funding amount for a long time had a component on capacity building. So we need to understand, one, what's the need going forward, and two, what has already been done, what has been achieved through the capacity building programs that have been run so far, and then on the basis of that, plan a very targeted capacity building program so that we know that we will be able to achieve what the minister is talking about. You will have people who will be able to man the sector in the areas that are necessary, because there's always a risk of a mismatch if you don't do that analysis before you start. But GOGIC is definitely committed to supporting capacity building.
The Ghana Oil and Gas for Inclusive Growth's key objective has been to support Ghana to make the most of the oil and gas sector.
Now, government is being challenged to do more in meeting its funding obligations in climate change support initiatives. Ghana is expected to mobilize about $23 billion over the next 10 years, a little over $6 billion from domestic sources and the remainder from international sources. This is under the initiative dubbed Intended Nationally Determined Contributions, which are pledges put forward by various countries to tackle climate change under the Paris Agreement. The UNDP Africa team leader on climate change, Alio Diaz, says private sector participation will be key in meeting the nation's target.
Under the climate change plan developed under the Paris Agreement in December 2015, Ghana needs $22.6 billion in investments to fund actions to mitigate carbon emission. Speaking to Joy Business, UNDP Africa team lead on climate change said private sector participation is key.
And if you read the Ghana's nationally determined contribution, it's talking about mobilizing internal and international financing up to $22 billion to be able to meet the targets of Ghana in the NDC, and that's absolutely important. And part of that money, that money is looking into renewable energy, promoting renewable energy, into looking into more investment in energy and so on, sustainable energy, so that at least the country can be able to really meet the target and contribute to the 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees that the Paris Agreement is aiming. So it's absolutely important. But, the private sector will have a role to play. Absolutely. That's what we have been discussing yesterday. And the government also will need to put in place, conducive investment environment, so that the private sector will be interested or attracted to support that process going forward.
Project coordinator for China-Ghana South-South Cooperation on Renewable Energy added that the Renewable Energy Master Plan will help with policy implementation.
Government has rolled out a number of policy interventions to support private sector. One key policy intervention is the feed-in tariff, which sought to provide a good incentive for private sector to come into the renewable energy sector. But then government is also looking at a tender process for utility scale solar that will still help to reduce the prices for the average user. But then what we really believe is that most of these policies have been developed. We need to also move to the step of implementation, and that's how come the Renewable Energy Master Plan that has really been proposed is bringing everything together in a coordinated fashion to push some of the interventions that have been proposed already.
Sheila Tamaklo reporting for Joy Business.
Let's head to Washington, D.C. now, where Ghana and international development partners like the World Bank and Iceland have initiated plans to collaborate in protecting and improving the local fisheries subsector. Minister for Planning, Professor George Jambafo, has been leading efforts at securing the requisite investment partnerships at the ongoing IMF World Bank meetings. Iceland and the World Bank have a number of interventions aimed at improving aqua and marine culture in various parts of the world. The requested partnership will offer support to the University of Ghana, the University of Cape Coast, and the fisheries ministries in various ways to boost Ghana's fisheries sector. Professor Jambafo has been throwing more light on this partnership.
We had a chance to talk to the Minister for Fisheries. She told us what their major areas of interest are. And the first area that she mentioned was the area of aquaculture. But in aquaculture, there is the marine culture and then the aquaculture, which is usually on land, and that is where their focus is on the marine culture, and that's where they don't have a lot of technology in. So they want collaboration in that area to enable us to improve our ability to fish, to do this fishing, regulated fishing in the sea, just as you do it on land, where you dig a hole and then put some water in and all. This one, I think, usually is the cage that they put in the sea. And then, so that is the area that they are interested in for the collaboration. Then the second area is in marine management. And in marine management, what he meant was that, gear development, that is small scale fishing, that will be environmentally sustainable. So that is the second area that they want some collaboration. And then the third area was in capacity building, general capacity building, which will require the training of the skills and things like that. So these.
In other news tonight, government is establishing rural technology facilities and business development support units in various districts to provide support services for SMEs. The The initiative, estimated to cost about $17 million and funded by the Rural Enterprise Program, would, under the Trade and Industry Ministry, is part of strategies to realize government's industrialization agenda. There's more in this report. The provision of machinery, spare parts and repair services is critical to the success of any industrialization agenda. Often, factory operations are suspended for longer periods, leading to loss of revenue when critical spare parts cannot be procured immediately and have to be transported far away to repair the broken down machinery. It is to address this that government is establishing business resource centers and rural technology facilities to ensure that Ghanaian industries, particularly those to be constructed under the One District, One Factory program, have access to ready machinery, components and repair services. Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry Robert Ahomkalinse, who has been touring an existing rural technology facility constructed by the Rural Enterprise Program in the Bunaf regional town of Bechim, explained the importance of such a facility.
As we look at the opportunities they provide to provide technology solutions, it's a good start. Now we have to take them to the next level. You can see the young people here, capable, able, just need the right training. So we'll be looking very carefully about how we can provide them more facilities. They are there to provide solutions to businesses in this particular district. So if I want to go into a particular process, maybe I want to make Gary, but I want to find the right machine to do that. They should be able to provide that information. Maybe I want to process palm. They need to be able to find that. So this is a great start. I've seen some of the machinery that's there. The kids, young men and women seem to enjoy themselves. But ours is the opportunity to take it to the next level. So very, very excited. Looking forward to it and seeing what we can do to make it even more impressive.
Earlier, the Deputy Trade Minister engaged parliamentarians and chief executives of 161 districts benefiting from the Rural Enterprise Program in Sunyane on government's One District, One Factory initiative. Some participants spoke to Joy Business.
We are very much happy and impressed about the whole program. You know, my constituency is a rural area. The people are predominantly farmers. They grow cashew and a lot of products. In fact, it's a very good call, and it has come at an appropriate time. We are all happy and working towards it.
One district, one factory is a laudable idea. I also buy into it, and the same as the constituency and my MCE. We are actually preparing to take advantage of the goodies that the One District, One Factory have to offer Ghanaians. In the area of, especially any government in this country or the world is having a problem with unemployment. So how to create jobs for the teeming youth is my priority. So we are going to take advantage of it. As I speak, currently, Kintampo is endowed with a lot of natural resources. We have over 5,000 square kilometers of land, of which I think about only 30% which is developed. And there is abundance of land for agricultural projects.
Funding for the establishment of the 30 rural technology facilities is being provided by the African Development Bank. Moving on, UBA Ghana's CEO Abiola Bewa has advised business owners and heads of institutions to establish a strong connection with workers. According to her, this tends to ensure that employees remain efficient even in the absence of supervisors. She was speaking on our flagship leadership show, Executive Lounge, pointing out that the employees should prioritize their staff in order to get the best out of them.
The results will come by the people. So I learned, maybe in my earlier stages in life, I was very transactional, but now no. I've attended quite a number of leadership courses. Thank God for the executive and board of UBA. I've done quite a number. And I realized that when I focus on the people, when I focus on the people and I show interest in the people and they connect to my vision, whilst I'm sleeping, they are working. But when I focus on the numbers alone and leave the people, do you understand? It gets to a point you can't fire everybody. So they're okay, go ahead. And the job is not done. So it's good for me to connect with the people. So I do everything you can think of. There is no birthday that comes to my notice that I won't at least give you something small or send you a very nice message. When anything that affects their home affects me, because they need to be happy. And most of the time I take the bullet for them. So they've come to see that the MD is there for us. Oh, as for MD, you can always run to. And when I believe in something, whatever you want to push, if I'm not backing you, it means I don't understand. So teach me and let me understand. Once I understand, I'll throw my weight behind you and we go pushing. So that's, I think, has worked. The people first before the figures. It has really worked for me.
So catch the full interview Saturday at 6 p.m., Sunday at 8 p.m. right here on this channel. Now to our interview of the day, and tax consultant Abdallah Ali Nacher is advising government against reducing corporate taxes as planned, since it could negatively affect revenue. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has hinted of government's plans to reduce corporate tax from 25% to 20% in the 2018 budget. But Ali Nacher says government is better off rather focusing on measures to boost tax compliance among businesses. He spoke to Joy Business at the launch of the 4th edition of the book Law of Taxation in Ghana.
Interview of the day.
To improve tax compliance, you would have to educate the people so they know what is required of them. So if you look at our low level of tax compliance, one of the reasons could be attributed to the issue of lack of tax education, but not in all cases. For those who at least know something about their obligations under the tax law, they again need guidance. And so you may have to mix the issue of tax education and tax guidance so that you can address the needs of those who don't know the law and those who know the law but don't know what to do. Once we're able to get everybody to understand what the law requires of him or her and also guide the person as to how to obey and comply with the laws, then we'll get far.
Therefore, calling for a national policy on this very effect.
I think the policies are there. It's the issue of the dissemination of the policies. I've always been wondering why we cannot finance or fund places like the Information Services Division. They have these vans, they have the medium to be able to disseminate to all segments of the economy. You can see that you are doing your part at such programs. You are here, you get it on the air, people see what is going on here, what is going on. And so we need to look at it in a holistic manner. I think that you are doing your part, and government can do best if it can engage Information Services Department to do a lot of tax education to all and sundry. I believe they have a shortfall in revenue collection, which will impact on government expenditure programs. And so it will not be likely there will be more cuts in taxes at all. I think what they need to do now is to enforce the tax administration, roll out the coverage of the application of the taxes. And then once they increase compliance levels, we can measure to see what the next stage should be. I think our challenge is not so much of broadening the tax net, but rather ensuring that people comply. Because if you look at the statistics that we've been hearing from the tax policy unit of Ministry of Finance, at a point that we had 4.5 million tax-paying population, only 1.5 were paying. So we had a shortfall of 2.5. If we can get these 2.5 to comply, you can imagine we can then double, if not triple, our tax collection.
Interview of the day.
And thanks as always for being good company. My name is Daryl Kyle. That'll be it for Business Live. We are back next week, but you can get up to date on our news stories on our website, myjoyonline.com/business.